Visakhapatnam branch to welcome the resource person. Dear members, the topic for deliberation now is yet another crucial topic of importance in present scenario wherein lot of practical issues are coming up every day requiring specific thorough knowledge on the subject. I hope all the learned delegates present here who are listening the online and offline sessions of CA Jatin agree with me in saying that we are now given one more excellent opportunity on updating ourselves on the topic by listening to his lecture today. CA Jatin Christopher is also a cost accountant and law graduate. He qualified in the year 1996 and specializes in indirect tax laws. He is an invitee to the Indirect Tax Committee of ICAI New Delhi. He is a resource person for the institute in its various post-qualification programs on indirect taxation. He has contributed towards publication of educational and research material by ICAI on various indirect tax topics. He is also a resource person for ICAI and government in conducting trainings for practitioners, trade, and officers. He has been in practice since 2000 and specializes in advisory and litigation matters in indirect tax legislations. He is a partner in JCSS, a full-service firm with presence across India. With these words, I take the privilege of introducing CA Jatin Christopher to this August gathering. I request the learned resource person to deliberate on the topic.
Members face to face while discussing about GST. I've also been requested by Chairman to talk about some of the key amendments in the budget 2021 relating to GST provisions. The love and affection that I receive in Vizag is really wonderful. The amount of care and attention, all the arrangements, definitely all the compliments to the office bearers. The love and affection this time is like never before. Not only is the travel arrangements taken care of, food, Gautam is available to keep me company and discuss things with me. They even arrange for blood sugar and ECG checkup also. That is the extent of love and affection here, for which I am truly grateful. With everything, all the readings in the normal range, it's time to look at budget proposals in GST because now the BP will shoot up. In the budget, I want to bring out, I'm sure members have gone through the finance bill provisions very carefully. I feel compelled to bring up three types of topics for members to consider regarding budget 2021. There are amendments which are conspicuous by their absence. When there are amendments, there are some things that we will be very careful. But when something is eagerly expected and it is missing, then we will need to see what is the message that is being communicated to taxpayers on those areas. So very quickly I will list three of them. First, I'm sure all of us have heard of the umpteen number of High Court judgments that have said transition credit should be allowed. Transition credit should be allowed. If the portal is not open, you open it. Because when the High Court is what is called molding the relief, the High Court does not really sympathize with the technical challenges because it is looking at, it's a court of equity. It says if it is closed, you open it. It's not that it is it's like a cupboard that has to be opened up, but anyway, that was the direction of the High Court and the government very clearly has kept silent on this. So the message here is that transition credit, those who haven't claimed, even if it was legitimately available, is gone forever. All right, 4 years now, if we are still waiting that it will get opened up, then the message is very clear that it's not going to be opened up. If you look at construction credit, everyone celebrated Orissa High Court judgment in Safari Retreats, which said that if you are letting out your commercial property, then the credits in respect of construction costs incurred should be allowed. But when you look at it from that point of view, the credits which we expected would be allowed if it is let out, we find that there is complete silence on that issue also. Section 17(5)(c) and D very clearly bans credit. Whether you are using it for letting out or for own use, there is absolutely no credit, and there's no amendment, no whisper of anything in this area in 17(5)(c) and D. The third is Madras High Court struck down the constitution of GST Tribunal, and that amendments necessary in section 111, 112 have not come through. So another 1 year will go by without a tribunal. What is going to happen? Those who have suffered adverse order at the hands of the first appellate authority will have to wait without any relief. Second, where there are adverse orders, for this intervening period, more notices will come. So please brace yourself for some more time before we can get relief in the tribunal. So these some of the amendments that we see are conspicuous by their absence. Now we look at amendments that are there. The ones that are causing greatest amount of anxiety, let's talk about them very quickly and get it out of the way, because the more important amendments that are there are being shadowed by the noise around these few amendments. GST audit, no more. No more GST audit. But the message being conveyed is that there is a loss to professionals, there is an opportunity that is gone. But please bear in mind, time of supply is not in harmony with accrual basis of accounting or cash basis of accounting. And if it is in days, then certainly there is no alignment. So there is a pressing need for reconciliation. Rule 44, Section 44 has also been, is proposed to be amended to make this reconciliation responsibility the responsibility of the taxpayer rather than the auditor. Members don't have to fret, is what I feel, because it is impossible for taxpayer to accurately determine the reconciliation. Two things are not tallying does not obviously mean that one of them must be wrong. Both are right. And as chartered accountants, we understand. Imagine you have two sets of clients coming into your office. One whose annual return and books are tallying. Another whose annual returns and books are not tallying. Which of the two clients, based on your experience, you would be most worried about? The one which is not tallying, you know where it is not tallying, why it is not tallying. The one which is tallying, you don't know how he made it tally. So therefore, as a chartered accountant, we all understand if it is not tallying, we will do the reconciliation. If it tallies, first we will make it not to tally and then do the reconciliation. So reconciliation is not going anywhere, so please bear in mind. Today I see that reconciliation work is still there, without the burden of attesting that reconciliation. All right? So please don't lose heart. Whatever audits are due by 28th of February, complete it and get it out of the way. Audit for 2021, I don't think that amendment will get passed, notified, and implemented for the year 2021. There's a very, very high probability that this amendment won't even affect 2021. 1920 anyway, it's not going to affect. 2021 also it is unlikely to affect, for the reason any amendment in the central GST law cannot be notified with a corresponding amendment in all the state legislations. 28 states have to move a bill in their legislature, pass it, get it approved, and then get ready on one fine day for both to get notified. So please, let's not lose heart there. But where now this 35(5) and 44 amendments are creating such a furor that we are losing sight of two significant amendments that I want to bring to your attention. In GST, there is a very clear message that there is no scope for error. It's a system-driven legislation. The administration is system-driven, so therefore please expect aggressive tax administration. If you look at the amendment being proposed to section 7512, where there is a self-assessed liability, if a self-assessed liability remains unpaid, recovery action can be taken without a show cause notice. There is no infringement of natural justice principles here, because I myself have admitted that so and so is my liability. Where then is the question that a notice be given? What else may be my defense that my admitted liability is not payable? So therefore, please recognize, explanation is being inserted to 7512 to say that if you admit your liability. Members will be familiar with the customs judgment in Priya Blue's case, where Supreme Court said a bill of entry itself is the assessment order. The bill of entry is the appealable order. In case you need to file an appeal in respect of a customs assessment, you file an appeal against the very bill of entry which the importer himself has filed. Section 59 very clearly says GST is a self-assessment based tax. Where is this assessment order in GST? It's a self-assessment tax. Where is this assessment order? Tax invoice is the self-assessment order. Because in the tax invoice, I have determined what is a supply, what is the classification, what is the valuation, what is the rate of tax. I have done all the exercise that I'm supposed to do under section 59 and put out a document under section 31. GSTR1 is the place where I'm merely disclosing my admitted liability. I have assessed this liability and I'm merely disclosing my liability through GSTR1, and I'm discharging what I have admitted through GSTR3B. So therefore, friends, please recognize that once I have issued an invoice, and when it is e-invoice, I don't have to wait for GSTR1, my e-invoice itself becomes a disclosure of my liability. Explanation to 7512 very clearly says when GSTR1 is filed under section 37, recovery action can be initiated without a show cause notice. You have number of judgments to say that show cause notice is compulsory. You have Reflex Industries from Madras High Court, Mahadeva Construction in Jharkhand, LC Infrastructure in Karnataka. But please bear in mind, this amendment is very explicit in its objective that we are not going to issue a show cause notice. So the effect is going to be, once this amendment is actually notified, we will be informed that some taxes have been collected by the government by our bank manager. Bank manager will call and inform that, sir, yesterday I remitted 20 lakhs rupees to the GST department, here is the details. That is the rigor. Friends, please send this message out to taxpayers. Please don't take tax invoice preparation lightly. It's no longer a clerical task. It's an admission of liability. And once I have admitted liability, I cannot now say, please give me yet another opportunity to defend. What am I going to defend? What allegations are going to be made against me when I myself have admitted that it is taxable? Basic principles, section 58, Evidence Act of 1872, 145 years before GST, that law has already been laid out, says undisputed facts don't need to be proved. When I myself have admitted that so and so is my liability, no, to err is human. I can make a mistake, but even those mistakes has a certain procedure how to correct it in section 34. So please take 7512 amendment very seriously. Next is amendment in section 83. In the past, 83, which provides provisional attachment of property, including bank account, was permitted in specific cases, 62, 63, 67, 73, 74, not 65, not 76, not 61. Today, the entire chapter 13, 12, 14, 15 are covered under 83, which means when a proceeding is initiated, property can get attached provisionally. Therefore, we will need to take this very seriously. The message coming out of these amendments to me is aggressive tax administration. Expect aggressive tax administration, and rightly so. And I'm not even for a moment suggesting that it is wrong, rightly so, because the entire society, let's say I'm an individual taxpayer, I have canvassed an interpretation that brings the least tax incidence on my transaction, the entire society of taxpayers is looking to the government not to spare me, not to allow me to get away with this unfair tax interpretation to the detriment of society. So to do justice to society, government has to pursue individual taxpayers, and in that sense, it will pursue every interpretation that we have canvassed. So self-assessment is not necessarily a freedom. It is a freedom for those who are diligent, but it is a burden for those who are mischievous. So please bear in mind, there is going to be aggressive tax administration. So if we look at the amendments that are coming through in the Central GST Act, we have time because the states also have to introduce amendments and then they all need to get notified on one fine day. But what about amendments in the IGST law? 3 amendments in the IGST law I want to quickly bring to your attention. First, the definition of zero-rated supply is being disturbed. The definition of zero-rated supply is being disturbed. Supply to an SEZ is not straight away zero-rated. Supply to an SEZ with a qualification. What's the qualification? For authorized operations only is a zero-rated supply. There is a dealer in Toyota cars who got a request from a company who runs an SEZ and he said, we want to buy Innova cars. Please supply 4 Innova cars and allow us zero-rated benefit. So the dealer said, sir, what is the line of business you're in? We are in software development. We're in SEZ developing software. So the dealer said, sir, I think you may not be eligible for zero-rated benefit. But they said, look, we are a software company. We are in so-and-so zone. We are eligible for zero-rated benefit. If you're interested, you please give us a quotation without GST. So the dealer very simply said, sir, please give an undertaking that you will get endorsement on this invoice from your authorized officer in the SEZ, then I will sell you anything without GST. So the company said, yes, we will do it. They went back to the authorized officer in the zone and asked them, for this quotation, will you please give us endorsement? He said, please explain, what is it that you are exporting? He said, we are exporting software. Now explain to me, where in your software will you insert an Innova car? So 1 week later, they came back and said, you please charge GST. We are in discussion with the SEZ officer. So there is no debate here. Who is the person who will decide whether it is eligible or not is not the supplier, not the customer in the zone, not the GST law, but the authorized officer of the SEZ. Section 17(5) in CGST Act places various restrictions. You cannot claim credit on construction material and services and so on. But a developer of an SEZ has been allowed zero-rated benefit on cement, steel, tiles, electrical fitting, plumbing material, and all of those things. So please treat the SEZ scheme as different from the input credit scheme in the GST law. So therefore, this amendment is now being proposed to 16(1)(b), where supplies to SEZ for authorized operations only is zero-rated, which means if it is not for authorized operations, the DTS supplier will charge IGST. Question is, what is not eligible for ab initio exemption? Can the SEZ claim input tax credit and go for rebate when they export? Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. To this end, there is another amendment being proposed by introduction of a subsection to section 16, 16(4), which talks about 2 aspects. Everyone, once this amendment is passed, everyone will be in LUT as the default option. Everyone, once this amendment gets notified, will be in LUT as the default option. So if you want to export or make zero-rated supplies, government is going to notify specified class of persons. Specified class of persons only will be eligible for payment of integrated tax option. Second, specified class of goods and services only will be eligible for payment of integrated tax for SEZ supply. So therefore, there is going to be a shrinkage, which means what happened in 9610 What happened in 9610 from 9th October 2018, the amendment that was made will all become permanent. So therefore, please be very, very careful. EOUs, advanced license holders, EPCG license holders, if you import without payment of integrated tax, you are almost barred from rebate option entirely. So therefore, there is a very clear direction. Now what happens is many people are very disappointed. They are disappointed not because the law is so inflexible, because what is inflexible to the taxpayer, to the society, it is certainty. Isn't that what we all want? They want clarity, not something that changes very often. So when you look at it from that point of view, this inflexibility has resulted in disproportionate amount of loss. Disproportionate losses. I forgot to take credit within the time limit prescribed under section 16(4). I lost the entire 1 crore credit. The disproportionate consequences due to simple errors has created such great disappointment that various professionals, I'm not even saying members of our institute, various professionals across, including taxpayers, have made such disparaging remarks in social media against the law, against the government, and some functionaries in the government even, that someone somewhere heard what was being said and they did away with all those provisions that seem to be in taxpayer interest. So therefore, please be very measured as far as your criticism is concerned, because you're welcome to criticize this law. There's no need to go beyond the law and make mention of any functionary who's involved in implementing this law. Criticize the law, but constructively. I urge members to please have very measured criticism, especially in public domain, about what we feel is the effect of these amendments. Two other amendments to consider in CGST Act, which has a positive side also to it. As you know, if my supplier does not deposit tax with the government, I am not eligible for credit. That's the complaint. How can you make me responsible for my supplier being compliant? Supplier and the customer can come together, negotiate on the quality of the product, quantity of the product, price of the product, delivery schedule, dispatch the material, receive it, inspect it, pay for it. Everybody can do everything, but nobody can take responsibility for depositing the tax. So the law very clearly says, if you want the credit, make sure that the revenue has reached the government. Now in section 16(2), a clause AA is sought to be inserted. What does the clause AA attempt to say? It says if it is appearing in GSTR 1 and discharged in 3B, only then will we be eligible for the credit. So it is, previously we had 4 conditions in 16(2), now we have 5 conditions. Someone said this very elegantly, a very senior member who practices in litigation. His experience in litigation, sir will know better because he's been on the other side where people have represented in front of him in his, when he was presiding. Wisdom is to know when not to speak. Someone said this very elegantly and so advisedly also. So look at it from this point of view. We complained that we can't take responsibility for supplier's default. We had 4 conditions, now we have 5. All right, so please bear in mind, because this new amendment of 2B has come in this budget, all the past claims are safe. So please make that your defense in case 2B is less than 3B. Notices are sent. You please cite the amendment in 2021, which makes it mandatory, obviously prospectively. Substantive amendment cannot be retrospective. So look at it from that point of view and get ready, because in GST there is going to be floodgate of notices. There is no problem that notices will come. Notices will come. Problem is when we don't have answers to those notices. All right, I encourage members, when we look at automation, obviously 25 years ago, manual books of accounts were being prepared. But in the last 25 years, many youngsters don't even know what is manual books of accounts, so much so that they struggle to pass double entry. because one person is specialist in AR, another person is responsible for revenue recognition. Somebody is responsible for AP, somebody else is responsible for provisioning. So today in GST, when we have automation, e-invoice is prepared, it will auto-populate part A of e-way bill, it will auto-populate 3B, GSTR1, it will flow into 3B. So therefore, much of the work in a technology-driven environment will get auto-populated. So those areas where we have focused on compliances as an area of our time and attention, we will need to add to that litigation. Litigation is going to be a mainstay, and I encourage all members, those who have never even ventured into litigation, to please equip yourself, because Institute is doing extensive amount of programs and a lot of material is available online on the website to equip members to handle this aspect. I know a committee on capacity building for members conducts a wonderful program on drafting, pleading, and handling litigation in different subjects, direct taxes, company law, as well as GST. So please take that initiative, because litigation cannot be wished away. And I'm very sorry to say how things have been in the past. Let me tell you what I have directly observed. In VAT, when notices would come, the strategy is take the notice, find out who the officer is, find out from which village he is from. Oh, this is the way in Vizag also, is it? First you figure out which village. Then you figure out who is from his village, which batch. Find out all these things. If you can't find any contacts, briskly walk to his chamber, close the door, and immediately prostrate in front of him. It was working. It was working in VAT law because procedure was not given prominence in VAT law. In GST, procedure will prevail. Justice is a byproduct. It will take care of itself. You don't bother about justice. You stick to the procedure. There was this, near our Bangalore branch, students finish final classes and they go quite late, 9:15 they are going out. 3 boys on one motorcycle. There's a short distance where it is one way. And you know, final students, they think that they are gift to mankind. All right? They won't take the long route. Short distance. Anyway, the 3 of them are close friends, so they will sit close to each other and they'll manage in one bike. So they cross that one-way road, 3 of them, so that they don't get caught. They've switched off the light also, headlight of the bike. Now there is this constable who stops him and says, stop. What is this? 3 of you, one way, no headlight, show me your license. But with GST being introduced for the last few years, these students have become so adept at understanding and appreciating law that their first question is, in the past, I'm sure some members will relate, as soon as a constable stops you, what do? Prostrate. Try anything else that you have newly learnt to get away from that situation. But these 3 boys immediately stand up, ask him, which section? Motor Vehicle Act, which section? All right, you go, these IIT boys are coming, I will catch them. In GST, members need to be prepared when you receive a notice to ask which section. Section 160 subsection 2, it says, if you receive a notice that is improper, you are barred from entertaining such a notice. But if you entertain that notice and you fail to question its legality, you have forfeited your right to question this in the future. So therefore, when you receive a notice, with utmost respect, ask them which section. I have seen notices in the last year and a half, notices issued under so many sections. Notices entitled endorsement, proposition notice. All terminology from the VAT regime have been used. So the response is, under which section are you issuing this notice? After that, you don't get any response because they are now busy pursuing taxpayers who don't ask these sort of questions. Recently, one incident in Karnataka where the dealer runs a hotel. As you know, place of supply is the state where the hotel property is located. So he has paid CGST and SGST is payable. For 2 years, someone told him that don't have too many registrations, big headache. More places to make mistakes, more notices will come. So don't have too many registrations. So he has one registration in Chennai. So he has paid this CGST and SGST of Karnataka in Tamil Nadu. Officer visited and conducted an inspection and said what is going on. Very transparently he has disclosed that I have paid tax, CGST, SGST. I have deposited this in Chennai. So the officer said, CGST I don't know, whatever you want you do. And he's issued a show cause notice only for SGST. I don't care about CGST, that is central government, you forget them. I want state GST, you please give me only. So he's only demanded half the tax. So there is experimentation going all over. The question is, are we also in that same position? Are we also in that same position? So please recognize that in law, in GST, the procedure is going to lead the way. Justice will take care of itself. And when we look at budget proposals, the message seems to be very clear. No discretion, because discretion is the root cause of corruption. When there's no discretion, I think as professional members, we need to support such initiatives so that timeliness and no discretion will compel taxpayers to make this transition from being delinquent to be compliant. And that is certainly going to have its rewards in the long run. So please recognize that in the budget, whatever may be the response from economists, people who see the economy, how it is doing in these troubled times, as a student of this new law, our focus is to be on the amendments being proposed and the message being conveyed through these amendments. We have to be diligent. We have to make this make good use of technology, because government is also going to make good use of this technology. So keep this aspect in mind, and I'm sure you will find a lot of value in the budget proposals. Keep an eye on the ball when this amendment will get notified, when will it actually come into effect. Till then, life as usual, same mistakes as usual. No, we won't make those mistakes. We will make this transition quickly into this new regime.
Sir, any questions at the end or in between?
I think questions at the end, sir. But if you feel that regarding budget you have some pressing questions, please feel free, because we'll now get into talking about real estate transactions.
Now, with regard to this responsibility, if the supplier does not pay tax, it is your responsibility to see that he pays the tax.
Correct.
And you are eligible for
Yes.
tax.
Yes.
Will it stand the test of validity in a court of law?
I have two responses. First one is, are you planning to go to High Court?
No, if the amount is.
But 9 out of 10 cases, no one's going to High Court. All right? So therefore, please be very cautious when you say, the law itself says that this is a precondition. When you look at any right, people say tax is a vested right because of Eicher Motors, etc. A vested right does not vest from inception. It is inchoate right. It vests once all the vesting conditions are satisfied. And one of the vesting condition is that the supplier should have paid the tax. If a vesting condition is not satisfied, it becomes a divesting condition, is what Samant says on jurisprudence. So I feel that this amendment will stand the test of law, but it is for those who believe that this right is more substantive than the procedure of claiming it, may need to actually litigate. But I feel that this will stand the test of law. I'll give you one small illustration about this credit itself. As you know, sir, in Limitations Act 1963, there are two provisions, 25 and 27, which says, for 20 years, if I have been walking through your land to enjoy my land which is behind, then this becomes a easement rights. My land is the dominant heritage, your land is the servient heritage. If it's a government property, 20 years shall be read as 30 years. Now in 27 it says, once this easement gets vested, it is called an acquisitive prescription. Limitation is different from prescription. What is limitation? Limitation is where the time limit to take legal recourse goes away. prescription is where the right itself goes away. So I believe in GST, the time limit and these vesting conditions operate as a prescription and not as a limitation. So therefore, I feel this is a valid amendment, and if you see the way government has been responding, they are very resolute that they don't want to give credit unless tax has been discharged by the supplier.
You may become insolvent subsequent to this sale.
But if you recognize the person who wants to claim the credit, he knows beforehand that if he wants credit, he needs to ensure his supplier does not default. But knowing his responsibility, he chooses to be lax, pays him the 100 plus 18%, and then says, you should have done all the work, I can't do all your work. I feel the balance of convenience here also tilts in favor of the government. Someone even suggested, when you find a supplier who's defaulting, who's not paying tax, if you contact him, he is not responding, give him a purchase order, purchase some material, and then don't pay him. Members are very innovative in finding solutions. So this was a suggestion someone gave me. When you find a supplier who's not diligent in depositing the tax, give him a very big purchase order, get all the material, and then don't pay him. Then we will see what happens. All right? All right. Regarding the budget proposal, did anyone have any questions, please? All right. Real estate transaction, I'm sure everyone is aware. Vizag is a place where a lot of such transactions have been carried out. So I'm not going to go into those notifications itself, 3/19 to 9/19. I will just make reference to some aspects where there is innovative tax planning bordering on mischievous interpretation also. Land is sold to wife, apartment is sold to husband. Please bear in mind, the law has very simply said that in RERA, if you are liable to be registered, then you will fall within the new rate regime. The law on RERA is borrowed only for definitions. All right, if you see the definition of apartment in RERA, it says a separate and self-contained part of an immovable property. It does not talk about a dwelling unit or a plot of land. A separate and self-contained part of a immovable property. If you look at the definition of a project, converting a land into plots is also a project. So therefore, as a student of this new law, let's look at taxation. When it says apartment, let's not use common sense understanding of apartment, because we've discovered in the last 3.5 years that this common sense is not necessarily very helpful in GST. We tried using that and we've got notices already. All right. So it is time perhaps to give up taking help of common sense to see what the law explicitly states regarding the way it defines apartment. A separate and self-contained part of an immovable property does not leave out a plot development also. All right. 1% or 5%, those are the two rates applicable from 1/4/19. If ongoing projects have not opted for the new rate regime, have not opted to continue under the old rate regime, they will automatically switch to the new rate regime. So when you look at projects itself, please see if in RERA the project is liable for registration, but I have not sold any unit. I have not sold any unit. One may not have sold any unit, but coming within the coverage of RERA itself is sufficient to attract the intent to sell within this provision, and therefore the new rate regime will apply. We have clauses 1 to 1F in entry number 3, 11/17. But please consider this 11/17 notification is not only issued under section 9, it is issued under section 9, section 11, section 16, section 15, section 148. So this is like a Chiranjeevi notification. It will do everything it will do. It will sing, it will dance, it will fight, it will do everything it will do, because it is capable, because it's a valuation notification, it's a credit condition notification, it's an exemption notification, it's a rate notification. So please consider this with utmost care, because on one hand we have a resolute government that is intent on moving ahead with its policy. On the other hand, we have ever so often amendments being introduced to set things right wherever there could be something that is amiss. So please bear in mind that this rate notification is here to stay. If it is a commercial project, we will need to recognize that it falls into the old rate regime. Development rights is always on reverse charge basis. Development rights is always on reverse charge basis, whether the consideration in cash, that is revenue sharing, or in kind, where it is a area sharing arrangement. When you have transactions of this kind, it is tremendously important to see where each project will fit in. Where does each project fit in? First aspect to keep in mind from a landowner's perspective, we'll consider the perspective from different people involved. Landowner can completely avoid registration in GST. Landowner involved in development work with a builder, landowner can completely stay out of registration if he does not collect a single rupee advance in respect of the units falling to his share before date of completion. Builder is responsible for paying all this. Landowner will be liable for registration only if he wants to sell his units before completion. And it is only the landowner who receives input tax credit under 4th proviso. How does he get input tax credit? Basically, the landowner will receive invoices from the builder on the basis of the launch price of the unit. He will have to pay GST at 1 or 5% on his contemporaneous selling price. So therefore, the price differential is what is going to be subject to tax. But as you know, in section 16(1), it says every registered person will be eligible for input tax credit. So in order to be eligible for credit, he ought to be first registered. So register and then receive invoices from the builder. So if there is a proposal to dispose of units before completion, then the month or 1 month before he decides to dispose any of his share of units, the landowner will need to seek registration. Even though he takes registration, only credit he can take is the tax charged by the builder. As far as the builder is concerned, he needs to pay tax on the development rights on reverse charge basis. In a commercial project, there is no exemption. In a residential project, there is exemption if the unit is getting sold. So if you look at the series of notifications 3, 4, 5, and 6, you will come to one conclusion. All the apartments will suffer tax once at 1% or 5%. Whatever is the form, shape, we pay the tax. All the units, sold, unsold, all of them will suffer tax only once at 1% or 5%. Now, if you see the two sets of frequently asked questions and answers to them that the government released after April 19, it will throw a lot of light on the interpretation that should apply for the period prior to 1/4/19. I'm sure we have transactions that started in the service tax era, that continued into the GST regime. Some completed before April 19, some continued even after April 19. So please identify each of those separately to identify how exactly the tax incidence will arise. So when you look at the transaction from the builder's point of view or from the landowner's point of view, please identify whose share of the units are being disposed of, who is going to discharge the tax on which ones. Landowner has a very narrow compass, a small area where he will need to get into this GST compliances after 1/4/19. But before 1/4/19, landowner has to register, has to pay tax. An interesting thing we see is that notification 11/17 is upgraded to a notification under 15(5). 15(5) and 16(1) by 3/19, which basically means that prior to 1/4/19, the valuation is on cost of construction and not contemporaneous selling price like the circular 151 of 2012. So please bear in mind, real estate transactions have been greatly simplified in terms of compliances for residential projects. For residential projects, REP, RREP, it has been greatly simplified. But when you look at transactions, I'll touch upon a few areas where some innovative planning has been done. There is a plot project. A plot is registered in the name of a buyer. Then with the same buyer, a construction contract is entered into as a single residential unit with 12% tax and full input tax credit. Friends, let's pause here and consider. In law of tort, in tort, substance prevails over form. In taxation, form prevails over substance. All right? We could see YMIA's judgment where Justice Shah, in his dissenting view, gave a very elegant passage. This is not criminal jurisprudence. This is taxation. So a court can only read the contract presented by the parties and not rewrite the contract according to what it thinks should have been the contract. So when you look at a transaction where two agreements are written with a cross-fall breach clause, if one contract terminates, the other will also terminate. When there is a cross-fall breach, then the two documents are really one agreement. An agreement enforceable at law is a contract. Merely because it is contained in two documents does not make it two agreements. If there is a interlink between them. One is if it is a cross-fall breach. Two, if the parties with whom you are contracting are acting in concert. Land is sold to the husband, building on that land sold to the wife. It is remarkable that they will not act in concert. So the conduct of the parties must be in harmony with the contract presented to the court. If the conduct is not in harmony, then the court will make sense of the conduct and not the contract. So please be tremendously careful. See, anything can be written in a document. Anything you want, you can write in a document, and for every, pardon this language, for every rubbish you will find a case law. Please be very careful. Judgments that have laid down the law and not judgments that have interpreted one agreement. If you see that Gujarat Narmada advance ruling, very simply what has happened in that judgment, electricity charged by the landlord to the tenant is a reimbursement, what the ruling has said. Remarkable. The landlord is a public sector company. The tenant is GST audit commissionerate, nobody else. For first month in July 2017, they paid GST on the rent and on the electricity charges. Then the commissioner decided, I am not going to pay GST on the electricity. Audit commissionerate. So the landlord went and filed an advance ruling application saying, I think everything is one and the same. Electricity connection is given in my name. I have to give this building in a habitable condition which includes electricity supply. Torrent Power is supplying electricity to whoever is the occupier. We need to go back to Electricity Act 2003. Section 50 of Electricity Act very clearly says that every state will publish a electricity supply code. For Andhra Pradesh also has this code where very clearly the occupier of the property has to pay the electricity, otherwise the supply will be disconnected. Here the GST commissioner said, I am not going to pay tax. Advance ruling authority said, okay, he is correct. Please bear in mind, let's not find a judgment that speaks in our favor. Let's find a judgment that lays down the law. All right? GST is a new legislation, but it is standing on the shoulders of legislations that are as old as 145 years old. Transfer of Property Act 1882, Indian Contract Act 1872, Evidence Act 1872, Limitations Act 1963. So therefore, please bear in mind, we need to go back and identify what is the jurisprudence about this subject and then see how any of those will operate. Today we are talking about RERA and saying that I will not pay tax on land, I will not pay tax on apartment, this is a house, this is not a flat, it's a common dwelling project. Please bear in mind, when we look at contracts of this kind, we will need to recognize exactly how these transactions are being implemented. If the document can be accepted, that is how it will be carried through. If the document is not in harmony with the conduct of the parties, the document is of no use. So please be tremendously careful. I see enormous innovation. And let me tell you, in Telangana, I have seen, I am sure it is the same in Andhra Pradesh also, not just 2 agreements, 3 agreements are signed. Agreement to sell land, construction agreement, finishing works agreement. I have seen a completion certificate being given just after plinth. That means the structure has not even come up above the ground. Completion certificate is given, so the remainder of the project is only called a finishing works. Finishing works is plastering, not putting up the structure. So therefore, please bear in mind, if there has been a traditional practice, you know what's happening. There is going to be enormous cross-pollination of interpretation across the country. We just need one officer in a different jurisdiction to issue a notice on one principle that everywhere it will catch on like wildfire, because that principle is the same. Because this is the same law. It's not possible for Maharashtra to have a different concept of transfer of property and Telangana to have a different concept of transfer of property and Andhra to have yet another concept of transfer of property, because that's a central legislation. So my submission for members is, when we look at real estate transactions, let us be tremendously careful how these innovations in the agreement is being thought of, and what is the essence of that agreement. If the essence of that agreement is not in harmony with the conduct of the parties, that agreement will be ignored. The reason why I am laying emphasis to this is 3 points I want to submit to you. When you get a favorable order, don't celebrate for 6 months, because under 107(2), there is time of 6 months for the department to file an appeal against this to the first appellate authority. When you still get a favorable order, don't celebrate for 3 years, because under 108, revisionary authority has power to upset your favorable order. If you get an adverse order, you are going on appeal. If you get a favorable order, department is going to overturn that favorable order. So therefore, we are all going to meet in the tribunal. By any estimate of calculation, if every state is going to have one state tribunal and 2 area benches, we will have more than 100 tribunal benches in the country. 100 tribunal benches. When the pilot says, fasten your seat belt, what he means is turbulence ahead. We don't seem to be getting the message. He says, fasten your seat belt, but we want to go and have water. We want to go to the washroom. Pilot is basically saying, sir, kuchondi, anni akkade ostai. It will come there only. I meant the water. It will come there only, don't bother. But we are not interested. We want to get up and run around, go up and down. I will use that. No, that is full, so I will go right at the back, because turbulence is ahead. Please brace for this, because we are going to see an explosion of litigation, and rightly so, like I mentioned earlier, because if Andhra Pradesh attempts a very innovative interpretation of this notification, Karnataka is going to be watching, and we are not going to keep quiet. We are going to make sure that you get a notice. And if we innovate doing something, Tamil Nadu is next door, they are not going to keep quiet. This is a wonderful system, because there is clarity. There is no need for shopping. There is no need for coming up with our own interpretation, because we think that we are somewhere in one corner of the country. Please bear in mind, in GST, sitting in Bangalore, we are attending virtual hearing in Ludhiana. I know someone who practices in Goa, he is handling matters in Assam. All right? Surely in Vizag, I'm sure all youngsters, you have opportunity to practice across the country, as long as you have the same principle that you have understood to identify how this transaction operates. So we will need to recognize, in real estate, there is a lot of clarity. The clarity that has come about from 1/4/2019 not just throws light on how it should be going forward, it also throws light on how it ought to be for 17-18. That 1 year, 9 months period, how should have been the tax treatment, that also gets a lot of clarity. Now the question that arises is, how do we know this is correct? How do we take this stand? Who's going to pay for this tax? How will we bear this incidence? If we sit down and write 20 questions that seem to be bothering us, we will come to know that there is clarity. There is clarity because 1/7/17 itself, there was some interpretation that came about, or 1/4/19, some interpretation came about that changed the basis, that not only said what is to be the new law, but therefore what was the law before. So please look at it from this point of view. 25th January 2018, nobody can forget, because government introduced notification 4/18. What did this notification say? Development rights is liable to tax. We'll take an example. to recognize what is development rights. All right. Let us say, sir has a piece of land. Sir has a piece of land facing the beach. All right, sir. Why not? Sir has a piece of land facing the beach, and sir wants to invest 100 crores to develop that project. I have a small half-acre piece of land between his land and the beach. All right. He offers to buy my half-acre land for 2 crore rupees. That is 4 crores an acre. I am refusing to sell it. I refuse to sell it. His friends tell him, please don't let this person retain this land, because if he retains this land and you invest 100 crores on this resort and later he puts up an ugly structure on his land, your project will fail. Please do something and buy out the land. So he approaches me again saying, I will give you 3 crores for half an acre. I'm still refusing. So he goes back. Sir has come with all his wisdom. He will have during tea break, he will have a consultation. Sir will guide him saying, don't buy the land at 3 crores. Give him 1 crore only. Give him. So he approaches me. I will give you 1 crore. I said, sir, 3 crores I have refused. Why will I accept 1 crore? Take this 1 crore, keep your land. Now this sounds interesting. I keep my land and I get 1 crore. What should I do in return for this 1 crore? You just write this down and give it to me, that you will keep this land, your children will inherit this land, but whoever gets this land will never ever put up a structure on that land. All right. I am very happy. I get to keep the land. I want to use it for my own purposes, but I don't plan to put up any structure. Here is someone giving me 1 crore. I will now take this 1 crore, register a document and transfer what? Legally, without transferring the ownership in the land, one of the components of that ownership, which is the right to develop that land, I have detached from the land and transferred it to sir. So therefore, sir's advice has become extremely valuable. Attending the conference, lottery lag gaya. Attending the conference, he got this solution, 100 crore project. He managed to buy out my development rights. 4/18 brought out this concept into the open, where we were still debating, no, this is not land, this is not rights arising from land, etc. Very clearly it's come out that land and the right to develop land can be detached and transferred. 4/18 made it possible for a owner of a land to detach the right to develop the land and transfer it, and that is liable to tax, because Schedule 3 para 5 very clearly says sale of a land. Sale of a land is absolute sale of a land. Anything less than absolute sale of a land is liable to tax. So therefore, that is liable to tax in GST, and 4/18 simply said when it has to be taxed. When the law prescribes the mechanism of computation, it raises the presumption about its taxability. And if you dig deep into it, you'll find in para 2A of second schedule that it is taxed as a supply of services. So let's not entertain this argument any longer that it is a land or a benefit to arise from land. Development rights is not land. It is an intangible, immovable property associated with land that has been identified as liable to tax. So when we look at this transaction very clearly, there is no question that it is liable to tax. Today, if you see the amount of debate that we have seen in 2017, it's completely dried up. There's no one debating this issue. The question is, we don't want to entertain these possibilities because we have to discharge the tax and move on. So when you look at it from this perspective, the new rate regime in GST has brought enormous clarity. It requires us to deep dive into the notification to identify exactly how it proposes to tax, whether it is residential or commercial, apartments or plots, villas or individual houses. So please make sure that we get the benefit of the notifications, the FAQs, the clarifications that have come about, because that brings out the simplicity of what the government is trying to accomplish. Because GST is a law where there is going to be notices, because no one person will be permitted to unjustly benefit from an adventurous interpretation to the detriment of the whole society. We need to recognize what the whole society is doing and identify exactly how this transaction needs to operate. So when you look at changes in the law, in the budget or the real estate notifications, GST promises one thing and seems to be delivering consistently on that year on year, that there is no discretion and there is going to be aggressive tax administration. Those who are diligent, the law will assist. Those who are delinquent, the law does not come to the rescue. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity and all members for your attention and participation. If there are some questions, I'll be happy to take them for a few minutes. If you have any questions, please, relating to real estate. Gujarat, Karnataka. The only question that has been addressed in the rulings in Karnataka, in all the three rulings, are that the transaction between the developer and the landowner intersay what is taking place, what should be the treatment. But surprisingly, the interpretation has been that it should be taxed at 18% with credit on the selling price of the units. All right. Last November, there is an article in the Institute's journal about what is advance ruling. Unlike in income tax law, now even that has got completely changed. Advance ruling is a bargain. It's a bargain between the taxpayer and the state. For certainty, accuracy of interpretation is only incidental. All right. Even if the Supreme Court were to give an interpretation that is contrary, this ruling pronounced will be binding on the taxpayer and that jurisdiction. So therefore, rulings have come about in that manner. And I would even not, before faulting any ruling for not being accurate, I would fault the applicant for mispresenting the facts. All right. In all the three rulings, I'm afraid the facts have been confined to the transaction between the builder and the landowner and not with the buyer of the unit. And therefore, these interpretations have come about. No, 80% has to be from registered persons, 20% can be unregistered except cement and capital goods. That credit is not admissible.
So, sir, can you, regarding this land development, sir, can you throw the light on the relationship between the landowner and the proposed customer? That is the developer and customer, landowner and customer, sir.
All units will suffer tax once at 1% or 5% based on the category they fall under. That's all.
Land, sir.
Also, plot development also. Apartment is defined in 2R to be a separate and self-contained part of an immovable property. How can a plot being developed? Plot is being developed from a land parcel. How can a plot fall outside this definition of apartment? Separate and self-contained part of an immovable property. And I know projects, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Hyderabad, Telangana, Rajasthan, where tax is being already paid on plot development at 5%.
So you mean to say, sir, to precise, whenever a landowner has done development on his account or get it developed by a third party, sells the developed plot, he has to pay GST on this developed plot also.
Yes. If he collects monies before OC, he has to pay tax. If it is after OC, there won't be any tax.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Capital gain under Income Tax Act would be attracted.
Capital gain. In Sir's presence, I will not even dare to attempt an answer on capital gains. I'm sure Sir will, if time permits, Sir will respond to that.
So because the TCS part, etc., those things like 2G.
My own personal income tax, some member prepares it. That is how much income tax law has developed since the years we studied and qualified. So I don't want to hazard a guess.
Okay.
Sir has one last question and then we'll eagerly await.
Sir, with your permission, two questions.
Please, sir, please.
Sir, what is the change with regard to this concept of mutuality under the recent budget provision? The second question is, the liquidated damages deducted from the supply value, there are judgment it is liable to GST.
Yes, sir.
Still holds good?
Yes, there is. I'll answer both. First is mutuality. In June 2002, a service tax notice came to be issued in West Bengal. That June 2002 demand on Calcutta Club finally came to be resolved in October 2019, 17 years later, to say that service tax is not payable. The treasurer there, he must have fainted of that club, isn't it? The principle of mutuality, Chidambaram Pillai judgment, basically talks about the association and its members being one and the same. All right? In the context of income tax law, when members contribute to their association to defray their common cost, that it is not an income. Interest earned from investing that money collected is only liable to tax, etc. That is the principle that is continuing even now in income tax law. But in GST, an amendment is now proposed in 2021 with effect from July 1st, 2017 to say that we want to overcome the principle of mutuality. To say that between a club or a person other than an individual and its members or constituents and vice versa, anything, any activity or a transaction for cash, deferred payment or other valuable consideration is within the definition of a supply. It is sui generis. It's a different class by itself. 7(1) they've inserted this clause in this budget to say that GST wants to eclipse the concept of mutuality. Now the mutuality we will see in three instances. One is a club, another association, third is a partnership firm. I believe this amendment will not impact partnership firms because between a partnership firm and its partners, while mutuality exists, there is only a distribution of profits. It may be called share of profit, salary, whatever you call it, it is only an appropriation of profits and not a supply. But between a club or an association and its members, whether it relates to goods or services, only when there is cash consideration will it be a supply as a class of its own. But if you see the remarkable nature of this amendment is in 2021 this amendment has come. What about those clubs which relied on the mutuality principle, did not pay output tax? Now there is a retrospective amendment, so they will be liable to pay output tax. They have not claimed any credit. There is no corresponding amendment in section 16(4) to allow credit to those clubs today. So they have forfeited the credit and they will be liable for output tax. So therefore, in GST, we just need to recognize that the principle of mutuality, the legislature has attempted to eclipse that principle. As regards liquidated damages, I will give a small illustration to identify how this liquidated damages operates. Sir, we need to recognize whether the contract exists or the contract does not exist. If the contract exists, the contract will dictate what needs to be done. You know, in our college, the fee every semester they will give us a fee receipt. We have to go to the bank extension counter and pay the fees, then only we will get admitted to the next semester. Certain select students, the office manager will call them and he will fill the fee receipt and say, semester fees, library fees, attendance shortage fees, he will fill up and give it to us. Certain students, the school is very confident, will have attendance shortage. They are happy if those students have attendance shortage because the rest of the students will develop in their life if these boys don't come to class. It is not outside the contract that this damages is agreed. We have agreed within the contract. So whenever there is a breach of a contract, there are two types of breaches, a fatal breach and a non-fatal breach. A non-fatal breach is one that does not result in repudiation of the contract. The contract will continue. Pay that 3,000 rupees, I will give you hall ticket also. Continue not to come to class. Some students here in the class? Yes, there's something like that, where the college has benefited from their absence. Their presence benefits the college, some students are there. Some students whose absence will benefit the college. So therefore, when we have a contract where we contemplate liquidated damages, clearly one, it is within the contract and not outside the contract. Two, it is a non-fatal breach because the contract has not been terminated. And when I agree to suffer your breach of a non-fatal provision in the contract, it is a supply liable to tax, explicitly covered by para 5E of second schedule. In a government contract, if there is a liquidated damages, there is an express exemption, which means in a private contract, it is taxable. Thank you very much.
Sir, one.
You said two questions.
Relating to these questions only. Yes, sir. See, the concept of mutuality is not enshrined in income tax, is not enshrined in GST. Was it enshrined in any constitution? Somebody was telling, even though amendment was made, it will not stand the test of law, like that.
So 17 years later, we will have another judgment. Until then, those who pay the tax, government will allow input tax credit. Those who don't pay the tax, we will garland their photos 17 years later. That's how it is. We'll have to wait for how the courts will read this deliberate new amendment. But I feel that amendment is sufficiently well drafted to achieve the objective that they want to do. Because GST anyway does not want to break the continuity of the credit chain. So I suppose that works. Thank you very much.
Sir, that was a detailed presentation on real estate transactions under GST. As always, you are amazing in clarifying the doubts of the delegates. Thank you very much, sir. Now I request C.H. Chalpati Rao, immediate past chairman of the branch, to present a memento as a token of remembrance to the speaker. Thank you, sir. Now we